back. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Knitting Podcast, and this is episode 52. I have not only got knitting to share today, I have also got some sewing to share, so I guess it's like the knitting and sewing podcast. But yeah, I thought I don't always have a huge amount of knitting to share every week. I have probably more than some people do, yes, but not huge amounts of progress every week, and sometimes the episodes can be quite short, like last week's was under 20 minutes. And I know when I'm looking for a vlog or a podcast or something to put on whilst I am knitting in the evenings or whenever, I want something that's going to be a little bit longer so that I don't have to fiddle around with the remote halfway through a row or something. So I thought, since I do also do a fair bit of sewing and things and other crafts throughout the week, I'm going to just shove everything in and hope that it's still somewhat interesting for people to watch. I've always kind of thought, oh, this is a knitting podcast. I can only really talk about knitting, and occasionally I've thrown sewing in there, but yeah, I've really kind of gotten into it. I'm in a bit of a groove with my sewing at the moment. I'm really enjoying it. And so, yeah, I am going to just talk about all of the crafting that I do, and not just my knitting, so that episodes are a little bit longer, and yeah, I can kind of share it, because I share it on my Instagram and things, and I don't really tend to talk about it here. So that's what we're going to do, okay? I hope that's all right with you guys. I hope you find it somewhat interesting, but yeah, that's what we're going to do. I'm also going to try and drink that tea before it goes cold today. So I have got three finished objects and 2 whips to talk through today. Another reason why I've decided I'm going to talk about my sewing is because I've also sort of been like trying to kind of like refine what I'm knitting and like only really knit a couple of things at once, which means that things do get progress on them, but there's not always like a huge amount of things to talk about because I've only got like 2 or 3 things on the needles at once. So yeah, I thought it just might be interesting to talk about everything that I make. But yeah, I'm going to stop making excuses for what I want to talk about in these episodes and just get into it. So my first finished object is a knitting project, and it is something that I have been working on for my daughter, which you have seen a couple of times before, and it is her Effervescent Mini. And this is a pattern by AIMEE SHER. I knit the age 5. I pretty much knit it completely to pattern. I didn't add any length or anything in there. And I used Woolly Knit Super Soft Merino 4-ply in the colour Rose, which I do believe is a discontinued yarn, but I have found it in a couple of places, so I will have cost breakdowns for you. Not that I think you'll be able to get this yarn for much longer, but you know, for reference I'll put that in there. I used 3mm and 3.5mm needles, and the ruffle is knit in Filcolana Tilia in the colour Peach Blossom, which I also had chilling out in my stash. So since last week, I left the marker in after I blocked this, and I've been telling my daughter that she's not allowed to wear it since I finished it. I mean, mostly because it was damp still, but also because I wanted to just hang on to it for a little while so I could show it on the podcast. And it's not like she doesn't have other jumpers and things to wear anyway. But yeah, I left this marker in from where I was last week, so that is where I was. And since then, I've obviously finished the lace yoke and done the short rows on the back and the rib, and I've added in the ruffle. And this lace yoke just flew off my needles. It was so much fun to knit, especially with the added like little note in there to add in the stitch markers for each repeat. It just flew. It was so easy to knit up. I didn't really need to have to look at it, to be honest, because like obviously when I was knitting I could feel where the marker was, so if I had somehow managed to like add an extra or not put any yarn over or something, it was easy to kind of figure out where that was supposed to be because it was like partitioned into sections. The dog has decided to lie on a bag, but it's a paper bag, and so it's going to be really noisy, so I apologise for that. So yes, this is now a finished object. It is quite cropped. It says in the pattern that it's a cropped pattern and that you can obviously add length to the body before you join in the sleeves and everything. I chose not to do that because my daughter really loves to wear dresses and things. I thought, to be honest, this is probably going to get most wear over the top of dresses, and they all seem to have kind of like an empire kind of line with like then a big gathered skirt on the bottom. That's her like preferred sort of style of dress. And so I thought if I just leave this quite cropped. She can wear it with her jeans and her leggings and things at the moment because it's a little bit longer at the moment, but in the future she'll probably just wear this with dresses and things, or just underneath dungarees because she wears those quite often as well. So it's going to be a really kind of versatile piece in her wardrobe for a little bit, and then obviously it's going to get a lot of wear over the top of dresses and under dungarees. So yeah, I didn't think that the cropped fit was going to be too much of an issue for her, and I think this fits her really, really nicely. So like I say, the lace was so much fun to knit, so much fun that I got overexcited to start knitting the lace, and I managed to make a bit of a mistake in where I joined the sleeves and the body. So when you're joining the sleeves and the body, you knit round the body, then you add on a sleeve, and then you knit the rest of the body stitches that you add on the sleeve, and then you are supposed to then carry on and knit to the center back. And I did not read that bit. I think I must have missed it somehow. I remember that I added the sleeves to the body like quite late at night, just before I went to bed, and I think what I did was I read like knit the back, then knit the sleeve, then knit the front, then knit the sleeve, and then I just didn't read the bit where it said knit to center back again and place your beginning of round. And so for the whole of the lace yoke and then the short rows and some of the ribbing, I had my beginning of round. So this is the back. I had my beginning of round here. No, not here. It was here at this armpit. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. So I didn't notice until I sort of put this down, I think it was 2 or 3 days later, after I had knit all of the short rows and then a couple of rows of the ribbing. And I put it down to look at it at the end of the night before I put it back into my project bag. And I looked at it and I was like, why is the back of the neck on top of the armpit? Like, what has happened here? It's like, have I messed up my stitch counts? Have like I done my short rows wrong? And then I went back through the pattern and realised that I had not moved my beginning of round when I started the lace yoke. So on mine, my lace yoke is kind of all shunted that way a bit. I don't know by how much. And to be perfectly honest, because all of my lace yoke is sort of pushed that way, it doesn't really, I don't think you could really see it all that much. Or like you wouldn't be able to notice it from looking at this. Maybe if you put like the pattern photos up against this, then you probably notice. But yeah, you can't notice it throughout like the rest of the jumper because the whole of the yoke is in the wrong place. So I then pulled back to the beginning of the short rows, and I had to then replace my beginning of round. And what I did was I kind of found where the stitches were from the armpits, and then like counted how many I had between those 2 points, and then just put it in the middle of those two, and kind of was like, well, it might not be perfectly in the middle of the back neck, but it's close enough, and it will allow the sort of front neck to then be lower and it not to be like skew-if and sort of sideways like this. So yeah, that is what I did. I pulled back the short rows, replaced my beginning of round in roughly the right place, and then I re-knit the short rows and the ribbing, which was quite disheartening to have to do. It was it was silly not to have read the entirety of the instructions, but to be perfectly honest, like these things happen, and I would rather have just had to pull back the short rows and pull back the whole yoke. So yeah, I think, to be honest, it's worked out fine. The neck looks as it should now, I reckon. And yeah, I just had to re-knit the short rows and then like the 2 rounds of half twisted rib that I had put in already. And so yeah, I then went back and added in the ruffle, and I did change my cast off as well. The cast off in the pattern is, I think they recommend a stretchy cast off. I think they recommend Jenny's surprisingly stretchy cast off, but because I'd done tubular cast-ons, I decided to do a tubular bind off as well. And this can go over my daughter's head, but I think doing like Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off or any other kind of stretchy bind off probably would have been better, because it is a little bit tight. It doesn't have as much stretch as I would like really want it to, but it's okay. It goes over her head, it's fine. And then for the ruffle, I picked up my stitches as per the pattern. I just picked up one for every like stitch on the round that you're supposed to pick up on. But I did do my increases ever so slightly differently. So the increases in the pattern, you're supposed to do a knit one front back, but I was just finding that really difficult because I had the whole weight of the jumper, like sort of weighted down, like weighing down my stitches. I found it really hard to get my needle in to do the knit front back, and so I decided that I was just going to do a knit one, yarn over, and then I would knit my yarn over through the back loop to like twist it on the next round. And I think that's worked out perfectly fine, to be honest. I mean, there is a little bit of a gap, but like just here where you can see where I've picked up the stitches and done the yarn overs. But to be honest, like when you're actually looking at it, I don't think you can really tell. And so I'm not really all that fussed about it. The ruffle is kind of sitting a bit funny at the back because when I blocked it, it was obviously lying flat down, whereas the front was allowed to kind of like pop up a bit. So I think what I might do is just pop this on a hanger and then just quickly like steam the ruffle a little bit just to make sure that it kind of sits nicely. But I think it will kind of sort itself out like as she wears it anyway. So yeah, overall, I'm so happy with how this turned out. I think it's an absolutely beautiful pattern. She's really excited to wear it, and yeah, I'm really excited for her to have this in her wardrobe. I think the colour is absolutely stunning. I've used this for another dress for her, and so I knew that it was going to be a colour that was going to fit well into her wardrobe, work well with her skin tone and everything. And so yeah, I'm really, really excited for her to be able to wear this. I do have more yarn left over than I thought I would. So I had, I think, 5 balls of this left over, and I only used 3, and so I've still got 2 balls of this like hanging out in my stash. So I'm gonna have to figure out something to do with 2 balls of merino. Maybe I'll knit her something with stripes, or maybe even something for myself with stripes. So yeah, very, very happy with how this turned out. The sleeves are a good length for her as well. That's the main thing. Like, I don't mind if it gets too short in the body because you can always wear it cropped, but the sleeves need to have a good amount of growing room in there, and I think they do, which I'm very, very happy about. So yes, this is my daughter's Effervescent Mini, and I'm so happy that I have it ready for her for like a little Valentine's Day gift. I'm going to wrap it up for her so that she can have it for Valentine's Day and wear it. So yes, that is the Effervescent Mini. And I cast this on January the 14th, and I cast it off on February the 9th. So all in all, this took me 26 days to knit. And cost-wise, so the Woolly Knit Super Soft Merino 4-ply, I do believe it has been discontinued, but I did find it online for £3.95 a ball. There were obviously like limited numbers on the website, so I'm not sure how long they will be available for, but yeah, £3.95 a ball, and I used 3 of them, so it was £11.85 for that. And then the Phil Kalan Atelier, I had it hanging about in my stash, but obviously if you were going to knit this and you didn't have any mohair in like a corresponding colour, or didn't have any mohair hanging about in your stash, then it's £6.95 for a ball. But I used so little, I didn't weigh it, but yeah, I used like basically nothing at all. So with the pattern price of £6.76, the total cost for this sweater was £25.56. So yeah, pretty reasonable. And for me, it was kind of essentially like just the cost of the pattern, because I already had the yarn in stash. I'd already used it for one project, because when I bought this you had to buy it into packs of 10. And I've still got yarn left over, so I can still use it for something else. And obviously the mohair was just from stash. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, to be perfectly honest. So finished object number 2 is a sewing project that I have been working on. Now, I did not finish this up in 1 week, but I did finish it this week, so I thought I would just give it a little moment to shine. So these are the Penny Dungarees by Ready to Sew. And I used a leftover cotton drill that I had from last year, where I made my daughter a dress. I think it was an indigo mini from Tilly and the Buttons. And so I decided to make her a pair of short dungarees. She really likes short dungarees. She likes to wear them with tights in the winter with a little jumper underneath, and then she really likes them in the summer because they're easy for her to move around in. There's nothing tight. It's easy to chuck them over the top of a swimming costume. So I thought I would make her up a pair because she was asking for another pair, and I couldn't really find any in the shops because it's sort of out of season really. And I had the penny dungarees pattern hanging out in my pattern stash, with the intention of making her a pair of long dungarees. But yeah, so I made her a pair of short ones, and all I did was take a measurement from a pair of short dungarees that she has already in her wardrobe. And then, so I measured how long the legs were from like the crotch seam, and then I added seam allowance to that. I then measured that point minus the seam allowance from the crotch seam on the pattern, and then just like essentially sliced the pattern piece at the leg to that measurement. And so I have ended up with a pair of short dungarees, but what I didn't account for is the fact that these were meant to be full-size dungarees, and they had a fair amount of ease in them, which I didn't necessarily want in short dungarees. So these are quite big, and the crotch sits quite low. But that's fine, because I kind of imagined these as a bit more of a toile anyway for making her more pairs in the future. I always find that like, the first time I make something, it doesn't necessarily fit her all that well. Like, it does fit her well, it doesn't necessarily fit her perfectly. And this was the first time that I'd made anything for her that wasn't like a oversized flowy dress. So I knew that there was going to need to be some alteration in the sizing. And so because of that, I used a fabric that I had just hanging about in my stash anyway, that I didn't really have any plans for in the future. So it doesn't really feel like I was really wasting anything. And these are perfectly wearable, to be honest, so it's not really like the end of the world. And I also didn't like splash out and get any like particularly expensive like top stitching thread. I just used my like regular like polyester. Is it polyester? I don't know. I just used my regular thread to do all of my top stitching, and I don't think I necessarily needed to do like a fancy top stitching thread on these, because I think they look perfectly fine without it. Because it's a patterned fabric, I think that maybe the top stitching could have been slightly too busy. But yeah, this was just a really nice kind of like introduction into doing something slightly more technical. Obviously everything that I've made her so far has been like a big flowy dress, and so it hasn't really needed to be like really precise, whereas these did, because obviously all of the seams and everything need to match up. And there was a lot of top stitching, and I didn't tend to do a lot of top stitching beforehand. So I'm really happy with how these turned out. They are not perfect. They are not like you would get a pair of dungarees in the shops, or like somebody who has made them a lot of times before. My top stitching's a bit wonky, like my bias binding isn't amazing. I had to make my own bias binding to do this, which was not something I had done before, because I didn't have enough of this blue like ready-made bias binding, so I made some out of this cotton that I got from Hobbycraft. And yeah, it's not perfect, but I'm really happy with how they're turned out. I think that this is probably like the most precise sewing I have ever done. And just look at this bib. I can't believe I did that. That's amazing. I think the pockets worked really well. I managed to kind of like pattern match them so that you get a star in the middle of the pockets. And they match really nicely. And the same on the front pocket, I put a star in the middle of there. And then like the pocket bags on the inside have also got stars on. I used like a corresponding cotton fabric. But yeah, I used a tutorial from STEPH, I think her name is. She's got a YouTube channel called STEPH Time. I used her bias binding tutorial to make my bias binding, and it was really simple to follow. I think it was just me, I just maybe wasn't as precise in my measurements and things like that. But yeah, I'm very happy with how these turned out, and I think they are super duper cute, and they're going to be great for like spring summer for her running around in the garden and playing and everything. They've got loads of movement in there. They are quite wide because my daughter's quite slim, but she's also quite tall, so I made them to her height measurement and then completely forgot that I was making shorts, so it didn't really matter anyway. And I could have maybe just gone down a size. But all of my seams matched up, all of my pattern pieces matched up. I really like working in cotton drill. I think it was just such a nice sort of introduction. It's not too thick like a denim, but it's got good structure and everything, and it was nice and easy to cut and work with. So yeah, very happy with these. I also had to add in jeans buttons, which I got to use a hammer for, which was mildly terrifying, because you obviously have to like make a hole in your fabric to put it through and then hammer the button onto the little flat bit at the back. And so you only really get one shot at it, and I was very, very scared of doing it because I was like, I've put so much work in, I don't want to ruin it. But actually it worked out fine in the end. And I got some hardware, like dungaree hardware off Amazon, just to add those in, like a slider and this little buckle business. And so yes, very, very happy with how these turned out. She's very happy with them. And I think I'm going to make some more in the future, maybe some long ones in like a corduroy or something, because I think they are great. Okay, so that brings me to my final finished object, which is another sewing project. And it is the Baby Buttercup Bear by Me and Kiddo Patterns. And I used all fabric scraps to make these. So this one was made out of an old shirt of my mum's, which she donated to me. And so were these purple ones. And then these sort of white cotton ones with little gold bits on them were leftover fabric from a dress that I made for my daughter a couple of years ago. So yeah, I think these are really super duper cute. They are really easy to sew up. I'm pretty sure that you could just use just like hand sewing to sew them and not use a machine. However, I am slightly insane and decided that I was going to make them as like party bag fillers for my daughter's upcoming birthday party. And so I have made 8 of them. So yeah, I used a machine to sew these up because like there was no way that I was going to hand sew 8 bears. It was enough just sewing up like the gaps that you needed to leave to add in the like toy stuffing. Sewing up 8 body gaps and then 16 arm gaps was enough for me, and then obviously like sewing on the arms. Yeah, it was a lot of hand sewing, and to be honest I wish I'd bought a thimble because my thumb was not enjoying life afterwards. But yes, I've made 8 of these. So this is the first one that I made. This was a prototype. It's made out of a old linen shirt of my mum's, and I'm really glad that I got to make these out of some old reclaimed fabric because it means that I don't have to spend a lot. Party bags are expensive, and I didn't want to be spending a lot of money on them, so I decided I was just going to spend a lot of time on them instead. So yes, this was her one. This is not going in her party bag. I will probably be making something else, but I won't show that until after the party because sometimes she watches these, so not going to be showing that and ruining the surprise. But then I made these ones, and I've got 3 purple, which were made out of another old shirt of my mum's, but this is just a cotton. And I think this gingham works really, really well for them. I think that's super duper sweet. So yeah, there's 3 of those. And then there are 4 in the white cotton with the gold sort of stars and suns or whatever they are on them. So yeah, I'm really happy with the fact that I've managed to make these out of like secondhand fabrics, like I say. They took me quite a while to make up. I've been slowly working on these throughout the past month since we booked my daughter's birthday party. There are only 8 of them, hence why I decided to make things to go in the party bags. If she had had a whole class party and there were 60 kids, there was no way I was going to do that. I would just be buying things to go in the party bags because like that's just insane. So yes, these are my 3rd finished object, the Buttercup Bear by Me and Kiddo Designs. They are such a little fun pattern to make. I reckon you could probably make one in an afternoon, even if you were hand sewing it. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed making them, even though I made 8. So yeah, I think that's a good indication that it was a good fun pattern to make up. And I also really enjoy their little faces. I just used some brown embroidery thread to do that. So yes, hopefully her friends like these as little party bag gifts. And if they don't, then hopefully I just don't hear about it. That was all of my finished objects for this week. I do now have some whips, and all of my whips are knitting whips. Okay, so my first whip is the socks that I am making for my husband. So these are just a pair of vanilla socks. I've self-drafted them. I use 64 stitches and a 2mm needle for my 2x1 rib, and then a 2.25 for the rest of the body of the sock. And I have finished sock 1. So last week I was here where my little spaceman has been chilling out. And since then I have finished the foot and added the toe to this first sock. So the yarns that I am using are Cascade Heritage in the colour Moss for my main colour, And then the black stripes are Gusto Wool Echoes in the colour 1511, I believe. But these are leftover yarns from other projects. And so it's only really like the end of this Gusto Wool. So I, like I said, did change up the ratio of the stripes on the foot. So the black stripes go 10 rounds, 8 rounds, 6 rounds, 4 rounds, 3 rounds, 2 rounds and 1 round, and then obviously we go into the toe. But I kept all of the green stripes as 10 rounds per stripe, and I'm very happy that I did that, because after finishing up my last stripe in the Gusto Wool, this is all I have left. So there's really not very much there, and I would never have had enough to do 10 rounds per stripe on all of the stripes down the foot. So I think my plan of like making it look intentional that I was running out of yarn, and making the stripes like intentionally get smaller as they go along, definitely worked out for the best, because then they don't look like they were just like a scrappy pair of socks that have run out of yarn and have like half a green foot at the end. Not that it necessarily would have mattered that much, because most of the time my husband wears these with shoes on, but yeah, I like the fact that they kind of look a little bit more intentional, and not quite so, oh my goodness, I ran out of yarn. So yeah, I've just been working away on these kind of like as and when I can. They've been really good for when I've been editing or like doing anything on the computer, and really easy to just chuck a couple of rounds into. So yeah, I did a fair bit of work on them this week. And going forward, I just need to cast on and get going on sock 2. Then he should have a nice new pair of socks to wear and keep his feet nice and warm in these cold and damp winter months that we're having. Yeah, these are my latest pair of vanilla socks, and I cast these on January the 25th, and so they've currently been on my needles for 19 days. So yeah, got to get going on sock 2 now. Not gonna let second sock syndrome sink in. So yeah, hopefully get going on those later on today. So my final whip that I have to talk about today is of course my Irene Slipover, and this has had so much work done on it this week. I have absolutely loved knitting this. I've been like really excited to pick it up in the evening and get going on it, and so it currently looks like this. So this is obviously the front, but my marker is on the back, because last week I was still on the back panel, and since then I have obviously now finished the back panel, and I've picked up my stitches and knit both of the fronts, and I've joined those for the neck and finished the front panel, and I have also joined in the round, and I think I've done maybe like 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches on the body. So there we are. And yeah, this stitch pattern is just so much fun to work up. I've got to the point now that I've joined in the round that I've like memorized it, so I know exactly where I am without having to look at the pattern. And yeah, it's just really easy breezy going, because most of it is just knits and purls, and quite a lot of it is just stockinette, to be honest. It's really easy to memorize, and it's actually much more easygoing than it looks. So there's only really like 1 round that I actually have to kind of, or maybe 2 actually, sorry. Yeah, so there's like 2 or 3 rounds where I actually kind of have to look at what I'm knitting and really like pay attention, but the rest of them is just like knits and purl rounds. So it's just, yeah, like that perfect, like I said last week, it's like that perfect match between easygoing and also engaging. So yeah, I've just been knitting away on this, to be honest. So I'm knitting size 1, the smallest size in the pattern, and the yarn that I'm using is a mystery yarn that I picked up from No Frills Knitting, which is a yarn shop in Bristol, I believe. So I have no idea what it is. I just know that it's a natural fibre and it's a 4-ply, so I'm holding it double, which I think has definitely helped with the definition on my dip stitches, because I think maybe if I was just using a single stranded black yarn, they might get a bit lost. But I think also the variation in this yarn, in the colour, is kind of helping to give me a really good sort of stitch definition, because I did worry using a black yarn and doing a textured pattern if the texture was just going to kind of get completely lost in the colour. But I think that this is kind of holding its own quite well, and that the stitches are still, and the texture in the stitches is still pretty visible. It's really hard to show on camera, to be perfectly honest, and it's very kind of like dark and grey today, so it's not looking its best. But yeah, I'm very, very happy with how this is working up. And I think what I'm going to do now is continue knitting the body in these 2 balls that I'm working from at the moment, and then I'm going to join in 2 new balls to do the neckband and the ribbing on the arms, so that I can then kind of get more of an accurate view of how this is going to fit, because there are 2 hem options. There's a split hem and there's a straight hem. And so I think what I'm going to do is do the straight hem, because I want this to be quite cropped. I said last week that because I'm not sure what this fibre is, but I'm fairly sure that it's got quite a heavy sort of like plant-based fibre makeup. So I think this is going to be a really good summer top, and because of that I want it to just hit the waistband of my jeans. So when I'm wearing it on its own, it's not got a huge amount of bulk fabric. Or if I've like chucked it on under dungarees, I don't have a lot of bulk. So yeah, my main thing is to make sure that this fits like the length perfectly. So I'm going to do a straight hem, and also I think before I have finished the body, once I've added the arm and neck ribbing, I'm going to block it to make sure that I can get the body to the length that I want it to, and then I can pull back if I've got too much fabric there. So yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of work to get it to the length that I want it to be. My swatch didn't grow, but this is sort of quite heavy, so I'm wondering if that's going to have some play in how it works up lengthwise as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of work going forward to get it to the length that I want it to be, because I think having it just hit my waistband is going to stop it kind of looking like it's just like poofing out at the sides, and also it means that I can still wear it over the top of things, because all of my jeans kind of come to the same point anyway, but also wear it on its own and not have like a funny bit of either extra fabric or like have it look too short when I'm wearing it. So yeah, that is where I am with this. Oh, the other thing is this yarn, the colour bleeds whilst I'm knitting, which is something that I've not really had happen before. And so when I'm knitting it, I end up with like a black line going across my finger when I'm knitting from where I hold the yarn, which is kind of annoying. I mean, it comes off with washing, but yeah, it's not something I've had before. So I am taking that as a bit of a warning sign for when I block this, that I need to make sure that I block it on its own, so that the colour then doesn't bleed into anything else that might be in the wash with it. Because sometimes I do like chuck socks and things in when I'm blocking garments. But yeah, so that's kind of giving me a little bit of anxiety about washing and blocking it. But my swatch didn't bleed any dye, so I don't know, maybe it's just these balls, because I think I used other ones for my swatch. Yeah, maybe it's just one of these that's causing the problem. But either way, I will block this on its own to stop it kind of ruining anything else. But yes, this is my progress on my Irene pullover, and I am so excited to keep knitting this and like then also be able to wear it. I think it's going to be such a versatile piece in my wardrobe, and I kind of wish that I had started it earlier, because I think I would have got a lot of wear out of it. But here we are. So yes, that is my Irene Slipover by Journey Through Yarn, and I have been working on this so I cast it on February the 4th, and so it's currently been on my needles for 9 days. So yeah, absolutely flying through it, and I'm just so excited to get to the point where I can actually wear it. So that was all I have making wise this week. I do have some plans going forward. So obviously I want to get going on finishing up my Irene pullover, and I want to start on, not pullover, slipover. And I want to get started on sock 2 of my husband's vanilla socks. But I also want to cast on some socks for myself, and I think I want to get into doing some colour work again. So I have this skein from one of my... I hit myself in the face. So I have this skein from one of my advents, from my Giddy Yarns Grinch advent, which was a weekly sock set advent. And this one is week 3, and it's called He Got Her a Drink and He Sent Her to Bed. And it is this beautiful like blues and pinks and purples with this like turquoise sea blue mini. And I want to do the November Colourwork Cuff Club sock pattern from Summer Lee. I was really good at keeping up with the Colourwork Cuff Club, and then it got to November and I just fell off with it and just decided I wasn't knitting it. So I am going to knit the November Colourwork Cuff Club, and I'm going to try and catch up with that, I think, now. I might not knit the December one because it was very Christmassy, and so obviously it's not something that I'm going to get to wear that much going into like spring, summer, but I think I'm going to do November, and then I think I might do January as well. Having said that, actually, I am wearing my ghost socks. So yeah, maybe the December ones will still get wear because those were October and, you know, wearing ghost socks in February. But either way, yeah, I'm going to use this and I'm going to wind it up and get going on those as well. So I'll use them, I'll knit the majority of the sock, the ribbing and the like heel and the toe in the main colour, and then just use the mini for the colour work. But yeah, I think that's going to be really nice. They're going to be quite low contrast, but to be honest, I don't mind. I think they're going to be good fun. So that is all of my plans and everything for the week going ahead. One quick announcement before I go. I will not be posting a podcast episode next week because it is the half-term holidays, and so my daughter will be at home with me, and my husband is also taking the week off, so we are going to spend some time as a family. So I will be back in 2 weeks with another podcast episode. But yeah, please do let me know what you are making, what you've been working on whilst you've been watching this, or what you intend to cast on next, be it knitting, crochet, sewing, cross stitch, whatever kind of craft. I love hearing about it. I love having a little chat in the comments about what you guys are making, and to be honest, I find so many great patterns and makers and things through that, and I love the community that we have built here, and I'm just so grateful for all of you guys who watch and subscribe and comment and like and everything. I'm so grateful for it. But yes, I will catch up with you all in 2 weeks with some more knitting. Happy making!